Good afternoon, Commissioners. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Gillette. All those please favor, vote accordingly. All right, thank you. Item 4 is approval of the minutes dated October 28th. Moved by Harold Hall, supported by Commissioner Kraft. All those please vote. Thank you very much. Item 5 is public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public wish to be heard on any agenda item? Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public, we'll close public participation. Item 6 is a presentation by the Macomb Arts Institute Authority. Whoever's Ms. Miller, Jen, would you like to start us off?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you.
For your time today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. My name is Jennifer Miller. I've been appointed by you to be your representative on the Macomb County Arts Authority Board. Pursuant to the presentation that was done by the DIA approximately 2 weeks ago, we've had some study sessions and some meetings regarding the DIA's request to do a millage renewal. As you know, the renewal is coming up 2 years earlier. Wayne County has voted yes for it, and Oakland County has voted yes on it. We have yet to vote. Our vote is tomorrow. And in the meantime, we've done some deep diving on what it means to do a renewal and what we would like to see if we did a renewal. I do want to let you know that based on the questions and concerns you had, we did get a lot of information. I submitted written questions twice. Regarding salaries, regarding timing, regarding what the polling was. You know, the reality of it becomes is that we could put it a different time with more voters, Commissioner Drolette, but then we're running 2 different millage campaigns, which I don't think will necessarily be successful since Wayne and Oakland have already voted to put it on the March ballot. And so that being said, with those parameters, I looked at how we could use our authority in Macomb County, being the last of the counties, to negotiate the millage renewal and see what we could obtain to enhance the millage agreement that we have right now. Right now, we have an Arts Authority agreement that gives certain requirements as part of the millage that the Macomb County residents pay, including a number of senior trips, numbers of student visits, those types of requirements that are part of the millage, free admission. So what we decided to do is take a look at what we thought was lacking and what we thought could be enhanced. One of the things that we are most proud of is Sterling Heights, Warren, and Romeo got public art that will last much longer than the millage. Well, we had no input or say into where that was, but we know that those communities really valued that art, and that's a tangible artifact of the millage that they will always have, whether the millage is renewed or not. One of the things we've requested in the next agreement is that every community, city, township, all 25 of them, receive a local arts project, so that if the millage is renewed, that each community can have a art project that will stay in that community and be tangible evidence of the millage. We also talked about representation on the board. The DIA board has 2 representatives through the arts authorities from Macomb, Wayne, and Oakland, but just happenstance, majority of the board comes from Wayne and Oakland, and Macomb only has 1 additional representative on that board. And so that was of concern to us. So we have a commitment from them to work on enhancing Macomb County's representation on the full DIA board, so that we have input not only through the Arts Authority, not only through our 2 appointed seats, but have other established seats in Macomb County. We wanted increased school engagement and parameters on that, and increased senior citizens engagement. And so when we were able to obtain those additional parameters, given that Wayne and Oakland have already voted to put it on the March ballot, we then used that, like I said, to negotiate. And so that's where we stand right now. The vote is tomorrow, with this letter of agreement and resolution pending. That will be the first orders of business tomorrow before we actually take the vote. But it was very important that the Arts Authority in Macomb not only be able to deliver what has been a terrific partnership so far, but actually enhance that. And I think the local arts projects are going to be a great tangible way to do that, because every city and township will have a permanent art exhibit as part of this millage renewal. And so, you know, it's one of those things that we have to ask hard questions and we have to be demanding. We all like the DIA. That's why I asked to be on this board. I think it has inherent value, but we also have responsibilities to the citizens of Macomb County. And so if we move the election to August and November to increase voter turnout, we'd be running the campaign by ourselves. And that just doesn't seem like that would be successful. So to my understanding, I think enhancing the agreements we have in tangible ways that will have permanent enhancements in each township and city and keeping the March election seems to be where I'm headed for. But I came at Commissioner Smith's request to tell you where we were at, answer any questions you may have, and I serve at your pleasure. So,
Thank you. The decision to make the March ballot, who made that decision? Was that a collective decision by the board itself, or those?
So our board hasn't made, the Arts Authority hasn't made that decision yet, but when we were looking at the timing of it, the full DIA board recommended it to be a March. The Wayne County Arts Authority voted to put it in March. Oakland County voted to put it on March. Commissioner Brown does not mean we need to have it in March, but if we don't, the campaigns would be two different campaigns for the same millage at different times.
They would be the same campaign, it's at a later date.
Correct. So timing of materials and buying campaign ads and buying commercial space and all of the things the DIA would need to do would have to be replicated. Once for Wayne and Oakland and once for us, and we're in the same media market. And so you're looking at increased costs. Let me be clear, the Arts Authority shared our displeasure with how this was communicated to us, the position we were put in at a later date, and that was recognized, appreciated, and I felt addressed very appropriately by Salvatore and Jean, the president of the DIA board, letting them know that we didn't like being an afterthought, but rather would have been like to have been part of the process that decided this in the first place. But nonetheless, here we are with Wayne and Oakland voting for March. We have not voted yet, but that's the crux of the position.
Unfortunately, those two counties are taking using a technique that shows weakness rather than strength. These areas a lot to be proud of. They shouldn't have to hide from the voters and try to sneak it through on some obscure election date. It's unfortunate they've done that, but I also respect the fact that we don't want to be spending money twice.
And we tried to use that as a leverage in bargaining and enhancements to our Arts Authority agreement in order to make up for that kind of position we were put in. And so to my knowledge, we are the first and only that have negotiated enhancements to the millage agreement. Both Wayne and Oakland have not yet done that, and in fact voted to put it on the ballot before doing that. We had wanted, as the Arts Authority, to bargain that before we vote tomorrow to put it on the enhancement millage to guarantee the voters enhanced services through the DIA millage agreement should it pass.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report and also for the work that you're doing to try to enhance Macomb's access to DIA activities and product and so forth. So thank you very much for all that work. I appreciate it very, very much. Has the DIA agreed to the enhancements that you're proposing at this point? Are they signed a contract?
We would require them to pass a resolution, and we have a letter of understanding that they have worked with us on. So we had a very busy 2 weeks since we've met where we've negotiated it, and we would require it be signed before we take the vote tomorrow because of your concerns that, maybe the other counties want it too, and then it becomes unfeasible. So before we will take the vote, before I will take that vote, we will make sure that these are executed tomorrow.
Okay, so there'll be a signed agreement of some sort.
Yes, yes, sir.
Good. Well, I guess the other question and concern I have is the concern and focus put on making sure that the campaign is convenient for the yes votes, so they don't have to run two campaigns or it doesn't get too expensive. How can we factor in a campaign so it's not inconvenient for those pushing for a yes vote and using dollars to push for a yes vote? I don't really think that should be our concern, any more than trying to get a yes vote or a no vote for a presidential candidate or a candidate for Congress or any ballot question. So I don't think we should factor in how convenient or inconvenient it is for the DIA to organize, fund, push, and could get a yes vote on a tax increase. Our job is not to try to find a way to squeeze a yes vote out of voters and make it as convenient as possible. So I just don't think that should be a factor.
And if I may, I mean, everyone has the right to vote in March. Every single voter, we could have 100%
Sure.
voters. So there's not a position where this election is not known about, or it's a special election with nothing else on the ballot.
But
every
we
voter
know
has
why
a
it was
right.
put in March. It could have easily been put in August, could have been put in November.
Fair enough.
It could have been put a year from now. March was carefully selected among the available elections the next couple of years as the election that would be most convenient for the yes side. And then our determination is, well, we don't want to run 2 elections, so how can we make it more convenient? We have to factor in the convenience and the cost savings and all of the things that we need to do in order to make the yes side as convenient for them as possible, low cost as possible, or run 2 campaigns. Well, if they have to run 2 campaigns and one in Macomb County, that's not our problem. Our problem is try and do what you're doing first with those agreements that you're coming up with. That, I think, is important. And I think our next priority is representing as many Macomb County people as we can. And I think that to represent them as best as we can, we should be doing everything we can to make it as feasible for them, as likely for them to vote. And there's no vote more likely than a presidential election, a November presidential election as far as turnout.
With respect, from a turnout perspective, yes, but from an educational standpoint, with a long ballot, you lose the ability to educate voters. One side of this will be we'll be able to educate the voters properly, hope for increased turnout, hope that people come out and use their rights to vote, which is the most important rights we have as citizens, and really be able to educate them versus having very long ballots and people just guessing because there is no educational opportunity with ballots long. But I do hear your concerns and appreciate that.
Well, I agree that November is a longer ballot, and uneducated voters sometimes elect people like us, to these positions.
I assume only educated people voted for you, so.
I'd like to believe that's the case, but if it's okay for us to be on the ballot, and it's okay for the President of the United States to be on the ballot, and a U.S. Congress to be on the ballot, and a U.S. Senate to be on the ballot, it should be okay for a tax issue to be on the ballot. Those are, voters are making important decisions up and down. I don't think we should demean or assume that they're stupid when they go to vote for these.
And certainly, let me clarify, I did not assume to be
I
that
don't
anyone
mean to put
was
words in
stupid.
your
I think I used the words, it is harder to educate people on every topic when a ballot is very long. I never implied that anyone who takes the time or the right to vote is stupid, and I never would. What I think this does, though, is allows us to be center stage on a ballot so that people are clearly going to know when they're coming in what they're going to be voting on and have the ability to vote yes or no accordingly and really have the ability to educate them on all of the parameters, including these additional ones. And that's why we have multiple elections. We don't just have one election every year.
But campaigns are anybody who's run a campaign knows the goal of the campaign is to get a yes vote or a no vote, or vote for the candidate or vote for to get against a candidate. Educational campaign just means advocacy campaign. Are you going to educate them on the negatives? Are we going to talk about the downsides during this education campaign? Or is it all going to be only the positives?
I think different sides will have different pieces of education that they will share.
Yeah.
I think that there will be groups that will share how much each additional household's going to have to pay and what the usage is. I think people who want yes votes are going to educate a different way. But certainly I do think both sides will be able to really target voters and really educate people about this important issue, and especially with it being countywide in the media market.
Okay. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I thank you for the work you've done to try to improve Macomb's access to the DIA opportunities and so forth. I think that's tremendous. And again, I've always appreciated the work that the DIA has done the last couple of years to dramatically increase their presence in Macomb County and their value to Macomb residents. I think that's very important. At the same time, I still think we should put this on November, if at all. Should be on November. We shouldn't be trying to find a way to facilitate a particular vote on any particular issue as a government body. So thank you very much, and thank you again for your work.
Thank you for sharing your position.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. When I got the email, I was absolutely shocked at the representation. And thank you for alerting us to that. So I had a couple of questions relative to that. The first is, we know how you were appointed. How are all these other people appointed that just happen to be from Wayne and Oakland counties?
So I'm going to defer the DIA on that position because that is a technicality. If I could turn it over to the president of the board. He could better speak to how they are appointed. I just happen to know that we get 2, and our third happens to be a representative from GM who lives in Macomb County, because we even dug deep to find out exactly who was from Macomb County. And that's the third person, but I believe that the president of the board could better speak to how board members are appointed. That being said, we do have in writing a plan to increase our representation that is immediate and direct, because, you know, fair and equal aren't the same thing, right? So the Arts Authority, everyone gets 2 seats. Well, that's equal. But it's not fair if the rest of the board is all from Wayne and Oakland anyway. And so we had a long discussion in our study session on the differences between fair and equal, and what we needed to do distinctly in Macomb County to make our representation fair. And fair wouldn't necessarily make it equal in Wayne and Oakland, and I think we've really addressed that in a really positive way through this letter of understanding going forward.
And why would we have any from out of state, and why would we have as many representatives from out of state as we have from Macomb County? They're not paying taxes.
They are not paying taxes, but they bring unique sets of skills, we have been told, and unique circumstances with people with ties to Michigan who may leave the state who still want to participate. And again, I will direct to the president of the board more.
Okay, and I don't have a problem with having people from out of state, but the bylaws, because there's taxes involved, because this is not an art institution that survives solely on donations and endowments and things like that, the bylaws should be very specific to numbers of representation from each county. Now people are sitting on there, and I'm assuming either you grow it or people would have to leave in order to achieve that. So I don't know how long that would take. But let's first find out, how did these folks get chosen?
Commissioner, you're speaking about the Macomb members?
No, I'm speaking about the DIA board. There are 3 representatives from Macomb. There are 20 from Oakland. There are 25 from Wayne.
Yes.
And there are 3 from out of state. But Macomb County residents are asked to be paid paying the same taxes as the residents from Oakland or Wayne. So this is not a private institution at this point.
Correct. The Macomb members of our board of directors were elected. One member was elected, 2 others were appointed by, I believe, this commission to our board. And at the time—
When you say elected, is it on my ballot when I go in the ballot box?
No, elected
okay, so you need to be a
our—
little more specific since it's clearly off kilter.
We have a board of directors. Candidates for membership are elected by the board of directors.
They're appointed then, they're not elected.
No,
Okay.
they're elected.
How many people vote?
Just the board of directors, which
The
would
board
be
of
an
directors
appointment.
are elected members of the board. But in the case of Macomb County, the 2 members that were placed on the board after the millage passed were appointed after there was a competition, I was told, among a number of people for those 2 places. The Board of Commissioners at the time made an appointment of those two individuals. They serve at the pleasure of this Board of Commissioners.
Yes, their appointment to your board
Correct.
is no different than your appointments to your own board. You're calling them an election, but the only people involved in that election are people that have already been put on that board. So it's more of an appointment than it is of an election. It's not on a ballot where the taxpayers can go in and vote on it. Okay. So it's an appointment, and it's very clear that over the years the appointments have gone. I think it kind of opened my eyes as to why there's so much more hesitancy in Macomb County, because I'm for this, than there is in Wayne and Oakland County, because we're not part of it at all. And the second question I had was, Jen indicated that we were sort of an afterthought in the decision-making process for March. How were we an afterthought, and and this might be for Jen, and Oakland and Wayne were not an afterthought. What took place that differentiated us from the others?
Well, the process was the board of directors that I chair began thinking about millage renewal 6 or 8 months ago. We did that in a careful, thoughtful manner so that we didn't preview the discussions in the media before the commissions had a chance to engage and talk to us about those plans. We talked to all the leaders in the 3 counties privately before our board actually voted to place the millage on the March 10th ballot. That vote didn't take place until November the 4th, 3-4 weeks ago.
Okay, the other thing that I need to ask about, and I don't know, and there may be some attorney stuff we may need to look into, is you said you did this quietly to keep it out of the media, but we're talking about doing a millage, taxpayer dollars, which makes you a quasi-public entity, which draws into question your right to meet in closed session to discuss any of this. And I don't know the rules on an entity that's receiving tax dollars the way that they are, but this was specifically related to the tax dollars. So even if I support you 100%, that would have to be corrected in the future. And I would like to hear from Jen as to why she felt Macomb County was an aftersight.
You asked me also, though, why was Macomb treated differently? We approached all of the art authorities in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb at the very same time.
Okay, and I would like to hear Jen's response.
Sure.
They approached us all at the same time, but Commissioner Kleinfeld, it goes back to that representation. We've got 3, they've got 20 and 25. So I think because the volume of board members they naturally have on the board, when they were having discussions 6 or 8 months ago, I feel like we really weren't informed. We got an email that said, come vote for this. And I think we got it in respect to Gene and the DIA at the same time as the other arts authorities. But I think that we just weren't prepped and primed. And they said they talked to leaders, but we were the ones making the decisions and had no idea. And in fact, had gotten an email from our chair saying, come in and vote. And that's when we kind of put on the brakes. And then I reached out to Commissioner Smith as the chair of the board, as your representative, and said, I'm not doing anything until we talk. And that's when we started having study sessions and started written questions, and you submitted written questions, and we kind of put the brakes on it. But it originally had come to fruition with, let's set this up and vote. And so I think all arts authorities were treated equally. I just think Macomb County didn't have as much representation.
The discussions before they went to the art authority wasn't necessarily equal. Okay, I understand the purpose for putting it on the same as the other ones, because it may not be our job to advocate, but any committee created, it will be their job to advocate. You obviously wouldn't be seeking to do this if you didn't feel that it was important and necessary. So while we're not supposed to advocate, you've got groups that probably are supposed to advocate. I understand all the commissioners and how they feel on the timing of it, but it was decided by the other 2 counties. And you're right, with commercials. How do you do a commercial and you tell everybody to get out and vote, and then they come out in Macomb County and it's not on the ballot? So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I support the concept. I see some legal things that I want to look into that might piggyback on what you've already done, and I thank you so much for your representation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. Commissioner Smith, Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Well, one thing is for sure, it's just as easy to advocate for a smaller turnout election as it is to advocate against it. So I would imagine that it kind of evens the tables on that. Gene Gargaro, by the way, president of the board. Salvador, your wave, hi, how are you? Hi. When it comes down to the members of your actual board, and that's what Commissioner Kleinfeld was asking about, the discrepancy, how does it grow to something like that? And I understand there's some criteria that you know there's a certain there's a financial element maybe to be on that board that you have to donate so much or this or that, but how does it grow to that type of discrepancy from Macomb County to Wayne and Oakland?
First of all, let me say to all the members of the commission that those statistics are statistics we're not proud of at the DIA. And I said to Jennifer Miller and Jennifer Callens, we don't want to do this, improve this, fix this issue in a vacuum at the DIA. We want some participation by members of the Arts Authority to tell us who are the candidates that they would identify. Much like you did when we passed the millage 8 years ago. Again, I'm told there was a number of people who indicated interest in joining our board. Lillian DeMoss and Don Ritzenhein. I've said this to you before. I wished we had 6 or 8 of them on our board. They're terrific board members. I think there are more people like that in Macomb County. Now, how it got there, Mr. Chairman, I've been chairman of the board 18 years. The board was in the 30s when I became chairman. We have a governance and nominating committee. We have a talent and diversity committee. We're trying to look at all possible candidates for board membership. Salvador has made that one of his leading priorities since becoming chairman of our board. And if you look at the people who've been elected, it's an amazing group. The members from outside of Michigan are individuals whose families were members of our board at one point in time. They happened to move outside of Michigan, and they indicated an interest on continuing the family tradition as members of the board, and we've brought them back after this governance process. It's a gradual process. Over the years, we graduate people after 6 years. We take on new members every November at the annual meeting. I can tell you a 50-member board is a challenge just to keep all these talented individuals active. I promise them that this is going to be a rewarding experience. And the phone calls I get that say, you're not using me to the best of my abilities, those are the ones that are the most bothersome. But that's a nice problem to have. And if our board became 60 or 65 and we added 10 more members from Macomb County, it would be a great thing for us to be able to be proud of.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Is there an option to increase, or would it only be at the November? And I'm just, because I know that you said there's some plans in place, and that's what I try to sell this board on. This is a rewarding experience. Please participate. The same thing you do.
Yeah.
So what is have you talked about an increase in your board already? Is that something that we've talked about? And okay.
As Jennifer just noted, we have a letter of understanding we hope to conclude tomorrow before the Art Authority meets. There's a representation in that letter that we're going to do just what we've talked about, increase the proportionality of Macomb County residents, and by our annual meeting next November, add 2 additional Macomb County residents to our board to show that we're starting in that direction.
And I
but
understand,
as I say again, I would really welcome anyone who has candidates in mind.
Good.
The last thing we want to do is bring Macomb County people on the board and then have the commissioners or the Art Authority say, well, those aren't the best people you could identify for the kind of thing we ask them to do.
Great. And I understand when you have an organization and it's originally filled with a certain group of people, whether they're from a certain area or not, they're the ones reaching out to new people, so you tend to kind of stay in that area for a while. So I'm sure that this was something good. And Jennifer, I just want to point out that you're the kind of board member that we appoint that I wish all of our board members were like. You come back, you interact with us, you try to find new ideas, and I'm very happy to have you on that board. So thank you for all the work you've done. Gene and Salvador, you guys are always great to us here in Macomb. And Fred, I don't know how you do it, Fred, but Fred Miller, the clerk, Jen's husband. Thanks for being here. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
It's amazing she's so pleasant being
I
married
know,
to
that's
him.
what I was, really, I don't know how you do it, but I'm being nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jen, I as well want to thank you for your representation. As our chairman said, you're the kind of board member that every board would like to have on there. You're challenging, you're asking the right questions. My first thought was when you're sitting in these types of meetings where there's 28 Oakland and I don't know how many Wayne County was said, and we have how many from Macomb? How do you even get heard?
So a couple good things happen, right? On the Arts Authority, and Jean will attest, I go to every full board meeting that we are allowed and invited to go to. So I will drive down and make myself known because Arts Authority members are allowed to come down to the full board meetings. So I will drive down, Jennifer Callens drives down, and we make ourselves represented that way. Another good thing about the agreement we have, and while it may seem like, oh, we're going to increase just by 2 or 3 seats immediately, when the Arts Authority gets to appoint members to the DIA board, it comes with no financial requirement. And so these seats, we can really pick the best of the best without having to make them make any kind of representation on donations or fundraising. We really can pick unique individuals that will best serve the board. And so that's one of the reasons we wanted it in writing to Commissioner Drollet and Commissioner Kleinfeld's points, so that we could guarantee these seats that anyone would be welcomed. We wouldn't have to do kind of a litmus test, but these seats are just ours to appoint for reasons we want them appointed. And I think that the county issues on the day-to-day business of the DIA kind of fade away. I mean, they're heightened when we're talking about millages and millage renewals, but you know, the Arts Authority really deals with the agreement that we have, and the DIA board deals with the business of the DIA. But we are allowed in Macomb County Arts Authority to have a presence and participate in those full board meetings, which helps boost up. And I'm not a quiet one, so we do okay.
Well, Fred would concur with that. Second point, we've had discussion by some of my colleagues about the March date for the election. That wasn't a date. You're not here advocating March.
Not at all.
You're not here advocating August or November. What you're here is explaining the logic of why March makes sense once Wayne and Oakland have already approved the March date. That you would, in effect, be running separate campaigns, and although it's not a cost to Macomb County, it will certainly be a huge cost to those that are advocating in favor, as well as those advocating against. So what you're recommending, I think I'm hearing, with March, is you're trying to balance the scales so that each side has equal opportunity for representation. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, I think given the parameters we were in, we tried to leverage it in bargaining more enhancements, right? Because in some ways going last is being put in a corner, in other ways it's a sense of power, right? Because the other counties have already agreed, we have not, we've held out, and then what we need is salaries discussions. What we need is more representation on the board, and if all of those things happen, then to me, it's able to get the best from Macomb County residents that we are able to do. Whether they vote for or against it is each individual voter's rights, and I don't advocate yes or no. But as an Arts Authority member, I think my prerogative and as your representative is to say, what can I deliver that should the voters vote yes, they are getting the best that they can get? And am I negotiating and getting them the most that they can get out of this millage? And it's really up for them to vote yes or no.
And to your credit, I'm sure if you went around the group here and asked each one of us, do we support March, August, or November, you're likely to get a huge variety of responses to that, because we went through that with the jail proposal. Do we want it in August? Do we want it in November? Nobody ever mentioned March, thank goodness, or we'd still be here. So I want to thank you for your representation and what you're doing. You coming back here and answering the questions that we asked you is a benefit to all of us, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Haw. Any other speakers? Seeing none, I need a motion to receive and file the report. Okay, moved by Commissioner Hall, supported by Commissioner Myjack. All speak vote. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Item 7, department recommendations. We got a collective bargaining agreement from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, ASME 411. Need a motion to recommend this to the full board. Moved by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Lucido. Is there any discussion on this topic? Would you come forward and give us a summary of the agreement? I don't think we're going to reject it, but we can certainly let us know what was said.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, staff of the board. We appreciate your time today. We do have a number of agreements in front of you that we have had ratified by the different collective bargaining groups. They're pretty standard amongst each and every agreement. Most of the language that you see or comments that we have made in the presentation to you on language are employee friendly, in addition to the wages on the PTA schedule being increased by 2% per year.
Okay, one second. If it's all right with the commission, can you comment on all of the agreements before us and instead of taking them individually? Would that be, since they're all patterned, right? They're all very similar.
I appreciate that, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
That's kind of what I was planning to do, but I can certainly talk about them individually.
I think we do them collectively.
Okay.
Discuss them collectively, and we'll go through and approve them individually.
Thank you very much. So the wage increases to the PTA schedule, which is that more reasonable schedule that we have gone from 200 plus salary schedules to 16. We're proposing that there's a 2% increase on that schedule per year. Not every individual employee is on the PTA schedule. Those individual employees are getting a $1,000 lump sum. For most of our employees in the county, that will represent more than a 1% lump sum to them. That'll come the second pay in January. I see that as kind of an opportunity for people to pay off their Christmas debt if they go into any Christmas debt. So the amount that we negotiated for these agreements is slightly less than the amount that was in our projected budget for 2021 and 22. The projected budget was 2% across the board for all folks, and this comes in slightly below that. So I am happy to answer any other questions that any commissioners may have.
Thank you. Speakers, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Just at the very end, you said the little less than 2% for all folks. When you say for all folks, does that include those ones that you refer to as red circled? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gillette.
I'll pass, thank you.
Commissioner, any other commissioners? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve.
Oh, wait, I did remember.
Very good.
And that is, how long are
So
these agreements for?
These agreements are 3-year agreements.
3 agreements, so 2%, 2%, plus the $1,000 one time in the 1 year, right?
One time in every year that you're a red circled employee.
Every year
Yes.
you're a red circle employee. And then is there a renegotiation option in the 3rd year?
No, thank goodness there is not. We will not just be arguing over wages in the 3rd year. These are settled agreements for 20, 21, and 22. After that point, hopefully in 22, a little bit earlier than we started this year, we'll start into contract negotiations we generally do a 3-year contract, so hopefully it'll be 23, 24, and 25.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing on this.
Point of
Appreciate it.
information, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner
There's
Kemp.
also increases with uniforms over the 3-year period as well. Yeah.
Okay. I'd like a motion to approve items 7A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, the collective bargaining agreements in our packages. Moved by Commissioner Myers, supported by Commissioner Hall. That these will be forwarded to the full board. Please vote. Next Thursday's full board, yes. Not 5 minutes from now. Thank you.
If I may, thank you.
Now you can sleep better. Thank you.
If I may I make
Yes,
one
please.
more comment? We have a couple of other agreements that we have entered into TAs on. That is the boiler operators and the corrections deputies. We may also have some other groups that TA prior to our meeting on the 12th, so we're hoping to be able to bring those with you. We didn't want to bring them to you before they had an opportunity to ratify. So you may see additional agreements on the 12th at full board, and I'm sorry.
Let us know as soon as possible, and we'll do our best to accommodate, okay?
We certainly will.
We appreciate the heads up, though. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Item 8, ordinance 2019-5. I need a motion to send this to full board. It's the updated ethics ordinance. Moved by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Leonetti.
Or moving it to approve, or moving and recommending it to full board, and I'll talk about it.
Okay, Commissioner Smith, Chairman Smith.
Thank you. As most of you know, we've been going over this ethics ordinance for probably about a year now, and we've been going back and forth, all in a good way, in the right direction, with our independent counsel, corporation counsel. Mr. Krisha had a lot to do with it. We've been working with the ethics board and coming up with everybody's ideas and trying to incorporate them into this. The ethics policy that's before you was sent out to everybody. It's been at least a month. There's been a few little changes. Dory from the ethics board has asked, yes, I'll give you the dates too in a minute. So this has been in your queue for about a week now, I believe. I'm not sure. Patty has the dates. This one right here has been available to you online for a week. And we're going to push it to next Thursday's board meeting for anybody that is now finding that it's in there to take a look at it and see. But so it's been something that we've actually collectively been working on as a group of commissioners and as a group of county representatives, because we've asked for input from everybody. And we've received input over the last year or so from everybody on this. But most specifically, we worked with the ethics board on some of their issues, and they seem very satisfied with the direction that it went. Patty's going to look up the dates that everything was sent out to everybody, but she's very clear that this last one was about a week ago, but the one before that was about a month ago, and we talked about it, and there's very few little changes in it from there. That being said, if anyone has any questions on it, I can't really speak to the details because our ethics policy, although we tried to make it shorter and in better English, more clear, regular, speak, non-attorney-ese.
Aren't that good?
It does not, it doesn't come easy.
Yeah,
So, we were at the place that we're at with all of the attorneys working on it with the specific instructions to make it as easy as possible for the layman to read, and this is where we're at.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. That's Mr. Kleinfeld.
Thank you. I did see that that we got one a week ago, but of course, everybody was focused on budget, Thanksgiving. And if you're one that cooks Thanksgiving, that's all you do last week. There's no question about that. That's all you do. Some of us not as good as others, but what was online was the final version, but there was no redlining and no highlighting of changes. Did you send us a highlighted version that I may have missed that redlines the changes and additions?
I think I hear Patty walking up right now. I'm not 100% sure. I heard someone walking. So I'll just tell you that she did, oh, that's you, Don's walking, that this original one was reviewed in August. And then I don't know if you've got a red line version of the few changes that were made between that one and this one, but I'll make sure that you get something like that.
It was away for a long time when we were working on budget, and then we get it in our packet, and there's no indications of changes, and we're being asked to vote to forward it to full board. The only thing I wanted to achieve was keep it simple, which 17 pages of an ordinance is simply not a simple ordinance, and to me, I see a lot of areas where we're repeating the same words in every paragraph, and you probably had a long debate about that.
We've had
But I
plenty of
don't think
debates
it's
about that.
necessary the way that, even just the, like the definition of a employer or whatever, the last line says anybody that's compensated by. If you have that line, then why do you have to have elected officials, department heads, employees, you know? It's, the reason I say that is not for legal purposes. It's because we're asking people to read this. And I got to tell you, it's, and then we ask them to follow it. But if they can't understand it, how are they going to follow it? But I know you guys have been working on it for a long time. That was the one thing I said from the beginning. We got to stop creating 20-page ordinances. It's kind of,
We moved to 17.
you know, but
You know, I will tell you this, that maybe the next step is to have a summary so that it's a little easier to read, but the legal part of it probably has to stay the legal part of it. And I haven't really been doing this, obviously, that long, but we have Mr. Crecia here and Mr. Leonetti, and I know there are some things that seem ridiculous in law that everybody says you have to have it, right? So maybe the next step on this is to have it summarized and have like a glossary or an area that says, this is what it says in general. And that might not be the actual legal document, but it does give some people an idea of what they're reading.
I would like to see what the changes were.
We'll
Thank
get on
you.
that.
Usually we have that when we're
Yes.
changing an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm one of the people that got, sucked down into the budget stuff and didn't have a chance really to review this. And I really do want to review it, so I anticipate that we're going to have an opportunity at full board, when this is actually up, to come up with any amendments that we might feel are necessary. I assume there's may not be amendments that are necessary, but if there are some that a commissioner may want to suggest, that will be the opportunity to suggest them at
We'd
the
have
full
our-
board.
That's part of our board rules, and if the board decides to amend, they certainly can if they wanted to.
Okay. I don't necessarily think this process is being rushed or anything. I realize there's people behind the scenes working to make sure the English is more bester. But I would like, I'm glad there's still an opportunity to review it, because again, I haven't had a chance. And I as long as there's that opportunity at that meeting to review it, because I just haven't had a chance yet. But thank you.
Of course, as always, any commissioner's got any questions ahead of time, can certainly submit them in writing and send them out to us, and we'll get you a response to those questions and concerns ASAP.
Can I speak again?
Sure.
I'll try to speak
Mr.
proper
Chairman,
English.
you have the right to speak anytime you want.
Thank you. So just like Commissioner Brown said, we can always do amendments. We can always recommend amendments. We'll have a few meetings between now and then, so if you actually have something that, is before next Thursday, it would be just like the budget, get it in as soon as you can, so, it can be at least addressed to the council, corporation council, maybe they could take a look at it. Also, in general, we can always amend this ordinance, right? We did kind of a full boat amendment here, but if you ever have a specific amendment that you think needs to be addressed, we don't have to go over the whole document again. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Motion's been made and supported to move this to full board. Please vote. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Item 10 is new business. Any new business come before the board? Seeing no new business. Public participation. Any public participation? Anyone wish to be heard? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. I need to receive and file the ethics report, item 9A. The motion by Commissioner Gillette, supported by Commissioner Carabelli. Please vote. Sorry about that, Commissioners. All right. Okay. Public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Item 12, we're going to go into closed session to discuss litigation, Fox versus Saginaw County et al. Need the room.